All right, welcome everybody for another episode of Erotic Wisdom. With me, Mrs. Love, your host, and today with my beloved friend Keriesa, tuning in from wintry Cape Town.
Hence the Jersey.
Hello, my darling.
Hello, Valentina. Oh, so good to see you.
Yeah,
Lovely to connect with you again.
yeah. Me and Keriesa have gone back a long, long way. We've done a lot of work together. um, within the grace of Shakti Malan when she was with us in a body teaching with us. And after that, we did a lot of work on the menstruation together, on the menstrual cycle. We used to hold evenings in Cape Town where Keriesa would teach the wise cycle, a very beautiful new perspective, very fresh and creative perspective to look at the for cycle in the body of woman. And I would do the entertainment part, as I often do. And I used to perform the vagina monologues. I'm an emotional creature, and my vagina is angry because I still do, but in those days, particularly, I really use the performance piece as a beautiful educational tools. And so we worked so well together. We were a beautiful
Absolutely. I
partnership.
think we were a powerful team. I think when people left after our evenings, they were on a high.
I know. And I remember those gatherings for a very long time. I still have people
Yes.
coming to show up in the work group, and they say the first time they met me was in those occasions.
Yes, yes,
They were very
yes.
informal and relaxed, and we use a lot of laughter and joy throughout the process.
Mm,
And
yes.
yeah, so I think maybe when I come back to Cape Town by the end of this year, we should have a revival. We should have a good
Definitely, definitely. The interesting thing is, during lockdown, a mother phoned me and she said 7 years ago she went to one of those talks and she vowed that when her children are teenagers, she's going to invite me to come and talk to them. And then during lockdown, she said, won't you just do a Zoom, a few talks with my teenagers on this topic? And that was so, it was, I mean, she came to the talk 7 years previously.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
When we meet the truth, it just come in so deeply we don't forget. Wow,
yeah, yeah,
beautiful. So
yeah.
I would just want to give you space because this episode I really want to dedicate it to the wise cycle, the way you present it. And I know you starting a mentorship course. I also took the mentorship course with you, and so many other of my wise women, girlfriend, and colleagues that are doing the work in the world. I know they came through the mentorship program with you, and I found it very powerful. It changed me. So I'm gonna just tell you a little bit of my story, and then I'm gonna pass it on to you. And I used to have a very, very regular period all my life, and after doing the mentorship program with you, my period became immaculately um, precise, and every month on the same date, um, my blood will arrive. And it's been such a delight because I never expect that to happen any longer in my life. I thought my cycle was the reflection of my inner chaos, reminded me that I'm a living chaos, and it's not true. And so it really, although the work is very light-hearted and inspirational and artistic, it goes really, really deep into
Mm.
the body. So yeah, tell us more about the why cycle. What are you presenting, and how do you structure your work, and why are you doing this? What inspires you? The stage is yours, Keriesa.
Thank you, Valentina. So, So we call it the wise cycle because, number one, we're cyclical beings, and we forget that. We want to um, just always be the same because that's what's rewarded in the world, showing up at the same level of power, performing, driving ourselves. And when we start realizing that actually what is truly the feminine way of being in the world is cyclical, and that this cycle is happening to us anyway, but when we join it consciously, then a whole new energetic pattern arises for us. And so what you said to me makes perfect sense, that your cycle was irregular before because indeed it was reflecting something about your inner relationship to yourself and to your cycle. And when you did the course and you brought consciousness to it, and you joined that aspect of yourself consciously and lovingly, it settled down in this beautiful rhythm. And the joy then brought joy because suddenly now it's arriving, and you know when it's arriving, and you can engage with it, and suddenly you've got a different relationship to your cycle as well as to yourself, because a lot of our relationship to ourselves is also reflected in our relationship to our cycle. And so the course is structured over 4 sessions so that people have, and over a month, so that people have time to integrate what they're learning and to apply. And so one of the biggest shifts for women is to make that what's happening in our cycle reflect something back to us about what's happening in our life, and we can listen and learn more about ourselves through our cycle. That's the one direction. So Christina Northrup, the woman who wrote the wisdom of women's bodies, um, she's a gynecologist, and she always says when people come to her with gynecological problems, she first addresses what's happening in the body, but then she always asks, and what is happening in your life? So I put a lot of focus on the premenstrual phase because it's got such bad press among women. And I think it's the most exciting time of the cycle because it helps us to go down, to go in, and to allow our fire to speak to us. So there's 4 phases of the cycle, and I divide the 4 phases into 3 phases. So the follicular and the ovulatory phase is one, that's the high tide, and the premenstrual and the menstrual time, the low tide. So we've got a high tide time and a low tide time. And these 3 phases, the high tide and then the 2 aspects of the low tide, gives us access to 3 ways of knowing and 3 ways of being. So just as an example, the premenstrual time gives us access to our intuition, our deeper knowing. And so often that's where things start manifesting. For instance, we can be very angry constantly when we come to that premenstrual time. The anger comes up and we lash out, and then it dies down again, and then our partner or other people just say in our life, she was just premenstrual, she's fine now. And that word just. And so we and diminish this wisdom that's lying there for us to listen to. I just yesterday was counseling a woman, and she said, my cycle is so it's so extreme. What can I do? Is there something I can take or do for it? I said, let's just tell me what are the things that you feel angry about in your premenstrual time? And then she she slowly told me, it's things around her partner and things about sharing parenting. And then we unpacked it. And then she realized she's not valuing her own needs and that the parenting is not shared equally. And out of that, we realized that she will have to have a conversation with him about how they share the parenting.
Mm.
So that brought deeper insight. Another example of so it's her intuition, it's her inner knowing that comes up and kind of intensified the premenstrual time so that she can wake up to this fact that the parenting, the boundaries there needs to be renegotiated. So the wisdom of that time just
Mm.
is intuition, and the way of being that is invited is reflection, reflective. So she was realizing she was reactive, and then we went into a reflective mode, and through the reflection we came to the wisdom.
Yeah, I like really this approach is really beautiful because what you just said, this word just is just premenstrual, that take away so much power. And instead is like she is premenstrual and she's now seeing clear the bullshit in her life. All
Exactly.
the bullshit that we live with, that we convince ourselves that this is the way things needs to be right now because of this reason and that reason. And the spiritual body doesn't want any reasoning. It knows that something is out of alignment, that we're selling ourselves short, that we are in contraction, that we are accepting lesser than ideal. And that in that premenstrual time boils up all in the surface. And so it looks like
Yes,
we are raging mad, but actually we're calling for the truth.
exactly.
And
So
sometimes this it appears to be unacceptable or crazy, but it's just because it's been put down for so long that then it explodes.
exactly. So the call of that time is to 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 ask unapologetically for what you need. That that aspect of being unapologetically in that phase. And I love the word that you used, clarity, because it does give you clarity, because it your skin gets thinner, and so you see clearer. The element of that time is fire, so it gives you clarity so that you can take uh, action and be and fierce compassion. You
Yeah.
see, fierce self-compassion that it
Calling
leads
out
you
for
to.
the things that don't work, that we
Yes,
pretend that they work. And I feel in the premenstrual is when the skin becomes so thin that we really see it. And I've now learned to take them seriously, the things that really irritates me. And
yes.
as we learn in your course, maybe it's not the good time to have the conversation in
No,
that moment.
so
Take
that's silly.
notes, and then later in the next phase when communication is clearer, still bring that
Yes,
issue back and have the opportunity to talk about it and to change something about it. Otherwise next month
exactly,
will come again, like get
exactly,
irritated at the
exactly,
same things because we're not doing anything about it, not because we are just
exactly.
premenstrual.
Yes. And so in my conversation with her yesterday was also, okay, but it's not the premenstrual time is not the best time to speak. It's the best time to reflect. And then in the conversation, she also started owning something. She owned that she wasn't clear in her boundaries. So I said, fantastic. That is also part of reflection, that you own your part, in whatever is happening to you. And then the menstrual time is then a time to pull in the things that you own and to release the things that you need to release, and to allow, to receive, to be receptive. And then the follicular and the ovulatory time is then the time to speak, because you're in your high tide. The hormones that's released makes communication actually the best at ovulatory time. So you choose your time to speak so that you can, so that your message or whatever you have to say can land.
Mm.
And just to link with that, I had such a lovely feedback from someone who did the course, and then she told her young teenager girl about it. And then later on, this girl won a prize to go, and the science prize, and then she had to present a project at another competition in Johannesburg. She had to fly up from Cape Town to Johannesburg. And then she said to her mom, and mom, I know I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I'm going to win that competition in Joburg. And her mom said, oh, you think your project is really so good that it's going to be better than the others? Is that why you think you're going to win? She said, no, I'm ovulating that time and I'm going to communicate so well and I'm going to win. Now, isn't that a wonderful way of just experiencing yourself, drawing on the strength of that time and trusting that and having the confidence?
Yeah, yeah. It's a powerful, how did you used to call it? Embodied management, time
Yes.
management.
Time management, exactly, exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
Yes. So, I'm thinking of like one example that Christina Northrup gave, also of a woman who had the most terrible, terrible premenstrual, uh, just completely irrational, screaming, shouting, going mad, actually going mad, over and over and over, month after month after month. And then also she went into a conversation, and then she realized that she wasn't happy in the relationship, but that she was, managing it in that erratic way.
Yeah.
And only when she really realized how abusive the relationship was, and she decided to leave. Within a month after she left the relationship, the cycle completely settled down.
Mm.
After more than a year of absolutely crazy behavior. So that is how finely tuned, how much wisdom, how much love, how much connection is there between us and our cycle.
Yeah. It's really, really powerful. And we really not looking into it in this with this lens. We think it's something that happened to us and we have to manage it in the best way instead of allow it to enter us or us
Yes.
enter it,
It,
this cycle, and
yes, and join it,
join it.
join what's
Yeah.
happening to us, joining the cyclical being of who we really are. You know, uh, what did I now want to say? Oh, just one thing about the course, and then I want to come back again to this theme. So in the course, I also use a lot of like process art, just working with clay and with colors and with painting, not to have art experience, but because we also learn in a non-verbal way, and especially with the feminine aspects, we need that non-verbal. So the visual helps for that cycle to become visible and to communicate to us. And then I also work with storytelling, with Vasilisa story, Vasilisa that has to go to Baba Yaga to find the fire, and the tasks that she's given, and then in the end, she gets this coal of fire, but the fear with which she's carrying this fire through the woods and all the tasks that's involved in managing our fire and owning our fire. Powerful story of the wild feminine, and then how we can engage with it and allow that to be our intuition, a healthy intuition. So, so I just want to come back to what we said a little bit earlier. It's just a thought that I've been having lately. You know, there's such a lot of talk nowadays about collective trauma, and uh, the impact of patriarchy, the trauma of that on our bodies, and how we can restore it. And I think working with the cycle and consciously working with that can be very restorative of all the trauma that we're experiencing from being in a linear, rational, very driven society.
Mm.
So that's just a thought, because I think we are all carrying a lot of tension and stress from collective trauma, from the trauma from our ancestors
Mm.
who denied their cycles, you know.
And the trauma to be human in the body.
Yes,
For
no,
me, this is
absolutely.
always the biggest, from the soul perspective, to be limited to a physical body. um, it's painful, it's traumatic. And so for me to work with the cycle in this creative way becomes fun. It's like the playground to be human in the body. And look, these things
Yes,
are happening. And there is one time in the months when my blood express and I can do things with it, and we can become creative. And today I'm wearing red and I've got a red dots to celebrate, the menstrual cycle. I And so that becomes a playful experience of my human expression instead of a burden that I have to carry. I feel that a lot
yes,
of human beings really take life too linearly. I am born, I'm gonna die. In between, if I'm lucky, I'll marry, I'll have children, I'll have a job description, and that's life. and
mm,
and so the menstrual cycle is something that sometimes get in the way of this linear perception. And when we enter it, we can start to become the artist of our life. We can dance with the
exactly.
cycle, we can track it on the calendar. We became a circle. Our life became a circle and not a linear way that pushes through something. So this idea that
Yes,
life is here as a problem, and us with our intellect, we need to break through the chaos and control this problem. And instead, when
exactly.
we enter the cycle, then life is a circle. There is no problem. It's a dance. It's a performance.
Mm,
It's something that we can engage with, and everything will move and comes back to the beginning point. So if this
exactly.
month I got it all wrong and was a fuck up, it's okay. I'll have another chance next month. It's like I'll have another chance in my next life, perhaps. Also, that life, we don't have to take it so seriously, that it allows us to do it wrong, to make mistake. And what I like about this cycle, this concept of now I'm missing the words, is in my head. Restoring. How do you say when you start in?
Yeah,
Um,
yes. It's
the what's the word? Not
yeah, it's
refreshing, resetting.
yeah.
Almost.
Yes,
Every
yes,
month is a
exactly.
reset. It's a reset, and we can make new intention and new commitment.
Exactly. And it's like the two halves are dependent on each other. Our society rewards the behavior of the follicular and the ovulatory time, the high tide. And
Yes,
so we want to stay in the high tide all the time.
yeah,
But the reset cannot happen if we don't acknowledge the low tide, the premenstrual time and then the menstrual time, that's where the reset happens. And the thing that women forget is the height of the high tide waves is completely dependent on how deep and how slow and how quiet we can become in the low tide, because that's where the reflection, the reset, the restorative action happens. And so and so I love this way that you say, like, entering the cycle and being the artist of it. I also sometimes use the word inner leadership, because there's the circle, but you're in the middle,
Mm.
engaging with the premenstrual time, the menstrual time, the ovulatory time. You're the one who knows when those times come, and that gives you the choices. So, for instance, this one businesswoman who did the course, and she was going to do business trip to all the stores that she was working for a big corporate. And then she realized she was menstruating in that time. And so she decided, but now how am I going to apply this knowledge? Because I do have to perform. I have to do the trip. I have to visit the stores. I have to find out the problems and problem solve. And then she decided, okay, I'm going to do it in a different way. The menstrual time is the strength, there's being receptive. And so I'm going to listen more. Rather than trying to solve all the problems right there, I'm going to go and listen, be more receptive, use my strength, my menstrual strength of receptivity, listen, gather, rather gather all the issues and listen. And then when she went back to headquarters, she did the problem solving and then communicated in problem solving mode. And it made a huge difference to her interaction, because people were now much more open, because she wasn't in this driven mode. She was more relaxed, she had more energy. And then she was with a colleague, and that evening they were writing reports. And like when you're on a business trip, you often work in the evenings. And then at one point she just said, no, I'm not going to do these reports now. Colleague was quite surprised that she was so, because she's quite a hardworking person. And she said, her colleague then said, she looked at her, she said, you know what? There's a hairdresser in this hotel that we're staying. I think tomorrow morning you must go early and have your hair done. You'll feel better. And then she did that. And when she came back to the course, for the next weekend, she had that lovely frizzy hair, frizzy hair. It was just so lovely. And it was just that choice that she made gave a whole different tone and sense of being
Mm.
to the business trip. So it doesn't mean that, when you're premenstrual, you must go and sit in a mountain or sit in a forest and be quiet. It just means that you choose to do things in a different way to fix the how and what you bring in terms of being and what you draw on in terms of knowing. So you're working with your strengths of each phase.
And the pauses for me while you were talking now, it makes me think like globally we're going into this deep menstrual phase with the pause, with the lockdown that everybody was forced to stay home and inevitably rest more and listen more carefully to everything where are there in their life. Is like the premenstrual time, all the things I noticed for me that I was battling with when lockdown happened were the question, am I where I want to be? Am I living my life in the way I want to be? It's like being in relationship. What's the relationship I am having with my life? Is it honest? Because the irritability came from the places where I don't meet truth. And so I think this whole year has been a year of perhaps global reflection. And my wish is when we're going to go in follicular time, which we're sensing it now, you know, the border are opening, people are coming out, that we're going to really use this lesson of this time that we needed to stay in and quiet and slow down. And what I get from your story, beautiful, that woman that listened, is the pause also, not to be afraid to pause and to
Mm,
postpone the action. Because as you
mm,
say, patriarchy really supported that coming out and being the productivity and the immediacy of things. You know, I often
yes.
battle within me, is like now I just arrived in Bali and looking at possibility maybe to spend longer time here, maybe relocating, and I noticed I wanted to have it all sorted within a month. I want
Mm,
to
mm.
know, and interestingly enough, my blood came, which I turned 50
Uh-huh.
this year, and
Wow.
and from December, since I turned 50, I stopped my period. It started to become irregular again because surely I'm embracing menopause.
Mm,
And for 2 months, my blood didn't come, and I was like, okay, this is it. It's my last blood. I'm ready.
mm.
And then last week, suddenly my blood came, and so the first things that happened was this extreme joy, you know, to find the blood in my on my toilet paper. I was like, oh, it came back. It's like the last kiss of the sun. You know, it's like now it's so precious became, you know, like a real gift. And then I also settled into the listening and the slowing down and reminding myself that there is time. I have time to take my time, that I don't have to
Yes,
find any solution, but stay more imbibed in what this place asks of me, what it wants of me, and
yes,
let go of my idea that I came with, my fantasy, my projection. And I was arriving with this penetrating force, and now I'm really sitting back and have much less expectation and give myself the license to take as long as I need. Um,
yes.
and yeah, everything changed. Suddenly I was able to
Sure,
smell the flower,
sure.
to, you know, listen to the sounds of the space, and yeah, to the pause. I feel
Yes,
it's a very
yes. And
important.
to connect,
Yes.
to feel interconnected, to open.
And and I think this is what in society we don't give space to pause
Yes,
for
yes,
until we need. And then when the movement will arrive, to trust that we will know what to do, and it will be
yes.
stronger and will be clearer and will be uncluttered by doubts. Because we took enough time to pause and rest, but also that in the rest we're not making plan for the future. That's
No,
true
no.
resting. That in
Yes,
that bleeding time we really spend time in the emptiness, in resting,
exactly.
in not projecting or anticipating, but be
Yes,
really, really present and comfortable into the unknown, in the mystery of menstruation, which sometimes is scary.
absolutely.
You know, it's like, okay, I have things to do, and now I'm taking a pause while I'm in in the heart. It's like this woman that goes for work and she takes the courage to just listen, because I'm sure
Mm,
maybe in the body she also had the pressure that she's there to problem
mm.
solve. And if she's
Yes,
not going to do it, maybe she also has another boss to answer to, or she's
yes,
going to come back and she hasn't delivered, she hasn't finished, and she hasn't resolved it.
yes,
It's
yes,
courageous to also take time to pause and to listen and to trust that when the time will come, she will have the perfect solution for the problem. And right
yes,
now, if she's going to try, the solution is going to be maybe not long term, it's going to be
mhm,
momentary, it's going to be wishy-washy, because she's
mhm,
pushing it for a
mm,
story, for an idea.
yes, yes. So that you encapsulate it so beautifully, and thank you for that sharing of your own life. And then I'm just reminding you that the way of knowing with menstruation, with receptivity, is inspiration.
Yes.
So seeing for that inspiration to come from above and to land. But there has to be a container, there has to be that receptacle to receive the inspiration. Otherwise, where is it going to land? And that's what you're creating now in yourself.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you to share with us the gift, if you can, the gift of each cycle, like now the
Of
inspiration,
the
the
phases, yes.
phases.
So,
Yes.
so the premenstrual time is intuition. That's the way of knowing, and so that's the strength of that time. And the way of being is reflective,
Hmm.
to be reflective. And then the menstrual phase is the way of being is being receptive, and the knowing is inspiration.
Hmm.
In the follicular and the ovulatory time is the knowing is imagination.
Hmm.
So that's where we we our way of knowing in the world is through our imagination. And so our way of being is like being active in the world. It's magnetic. Okay, so the way of being in the ovulatory time is magnetic. It's not going now out there and doing everything. It's because we've done the work of below. Now we come in and we hold the image like the egg, and we draw to us what we need.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's magnetic. The feminine way of doing is actually magnetic.
It's drawing toward the self. That's the true
Yes,
meaning of imagination, actually. To imagine what you want, because only when you can imagine it, it can happen.
yes,
And so if the
exactly.
imagination is strong, it will come, it will arrive.
Yes,
It's coming
yes,
from the future almost to meet you.
exactly. So you live into it, you let your being go into it, you embody it through your imagination. So I just want to link in with what you said about menopause, feeling that,
I know.
perimenopause, menopause is there. So what I found with, with working with the menstrual cycle for a long time, then people asked me now, but what about menopause? So I started then developing work around menopause. But what I've noticed is that if because now the women who've been working with a cycle have now moved on, to menopause. And what I noticed is that if women really work with their cycle, it prepares them for menopause, and the menopause is easier, that transition. The reason for that is the premenstrual time. If you really get to grips with your premenstrual time, the menopause is very easy, because what happens at menopause is that the hormones that get released during premenstrual time gets amplified, and so it's released almost all the time, so that skin becomes thin and all your unresolved things come up. So if you haven't done your inner work, it does come up at menopause. And so what women then do is they take medication, tranquilizers or whatever, or they want hormone replacement therapy because they don't want to go there. Or it transforms into illnesses, high blood pressure, diabetes, all those kinds of things. So because the menopause is the time for the fire, that deep intuition, that deep knowing that is really coming up at that time, to be embraced, to be embodied, to be stepped into fully, so that we can go into our wisdom years directed fully by our intuition, our deeper knowing. So that's the call, that's the task of menopause. And if you've done your cyclical work and if you really got to grips with the premenstrual phase and the menstrual phase and really been able to engage with that part as your friend and as your guide, your inner guide, then that transition becomes so powerful and so joyful. So that's why after I started working with the menopause, I started going back to the menstrual work. And even though I'm now, 61 myself and long, many years out of the menstrual cycle landscape, I see, the importance of it for preparing us for our wisdom years. And so I've regained my passion for it and my interest in it and
Mm.
my joy in it.
Yeah, I have to say, it's been such a easy transition in a way that I'm almost waiting for the problem to come. And I
Yeah.
remember when there was a time I thought I was having this night sweat. I would sweat a lot, and then is the symptoms of menopause, And then one day I just changed my blanket. My duvet was way too hot, and the night sweat stopped. So actually, I realized it wasn't the drama of menopause, it was just the wrong blanket, and no more night sweats. And that was funny.
And Valentina, it's again like the premenstrual time has been given so much bad press as a problem. The
Yes,
same way menopause has been given the bad press as a problem. It's not a problem, it's a rites of passage. It's one of the most powerful rites of passage that a woman can go through, because it's a rites of passage about her. It's taking the focus away from serving and producing a child and giving out there in the world, to coming into yourself and allowing your soul to direct your path. So it's a powerful feminine rites of passage. But
yes.
now it's been reframed in the world as a problem and something to be ashamed of and to avoid.
I was seeing an interview, listening to an interview of a woman that spoke that the perimenopausal symptoms start about 15 years before. And I was like, what? So mean that when you're 35, if we say that we go menopause at 50, some women start even earlier,
Mm,
it means that from your mid 30, you are carrying the symptoms of perimenopause. Instead,
mm,
and I thought, this is not symptom, this is being a woman, being an emotional creature. This is not a symptoms of a problem. This is the
mm.
awakening. This is a call for presence. This is a call for truth.
Yes,
This is a call of not settling for mediocrity when we want, we know what we want. And so I find
yes.
also this is a way to really mute women into symptoms. Oh, you're just irritable, take
Exactly,
this tablet and go to bed and all shall pass, when in reality it must
exactly.
not pass, because whatever
Yeah,
it's a problem in your life, it needs to be looked at. Something needs to be changed, and you need to be
yes.
supported in the changing. And in my work I've done with men also around menstruation and women, it's that often men are so excluded by this cycle of women, and so for them is even more mysterious and they get really scared. And my piece for them is that if they could just support us to go deeply, even, their wife and their daughters, to understand the chaos and the confusion of the menstrual time, and
Mm,
instead of labeling us or tiptoeing around us, they
mm,
could just serve us in a way that we can go deeper into this space. Whatever we
yes.
come out with, the inspiration that you talk about, then will serve the community at large, which serve the
Yes.
whole of family, and which includes them too. Then true feminine wisdom can be shared with the world, and not just wits and little girls that play princess of what I want, on a
Mm,
superficial way, because
yes.
we never allowed to go deeper. And if we could, whatever we bring to serve everybody. And I think men will also reap the benefit of this, and they would also then recognize that if there is something wrong with the way their wife respond to them, is because there is some truth that is being overlooked or overstepped, some boundaries. Could also be their own reflection, and I think could be a work that can serve in all direction, not just us women.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I'm just thinking of an example of one woman who did the course, and she then came back because I used to do it over 3 months so that people, really have time to integrate, but I do it now over a shorter period. And she came back and she said, um, it was her husband's birthday was coming up, and she was feeling so resentful because she just didn't have anything to give, and she didn't feel like doing something for his birthday, and she was just really not in a good space. And then she also then started menstruating, and it happened to be in that week before a public holiday. And then she remembered what we'd been doing, and she decided to ask her family to just, she's going to close the door and she's going to lie on her bed and be in her bedroom, and no one must disturb her. They must make their own food, etc. So she just had that full day, and they supported her in that. And she had that full day, not with any aim in mind, just to rest, to luxuriate in her menstruation, to sink deeper, as you say. And she said then, to her surprise, so she came out of it the next day, and then the next day, and suddenly she said all these ideas just bubbled up into her head as to what she could do, like something for the birthday. And then on that weekend, she just joyfully put this whole thing together with drumming and going out into nature and doing a whole ritual for her husband, and they had a fantastic time. And that is for me a wonderful example of what you were talking about right now.
Yeah, because ultimately he also benefited from that space that he gave to her, instead of
Yes.
being complaining about it, and him feeling resentful because now she's not participating to the family life. And he gave her
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time, and she was able to gift back.
Yes,
So
yes. So your cycle is not only about you, it's about your whole environment. It's the tone. It's a whole tone and an energetic that you create around you. And that energetic is happening in any case. So why not join it?
exactly,
You
exactly.
know?
Life is a circle. Let's better join in. So I just
Yes.
want to mention this because it's been bothering me, and I also let it be throughout this interview. The light in my video come and go, and I keep trying to
Yes.
fix it. And then at one point I thought, okay, can I relax with the being out of the light and in the light? And then suddenly I thought it reflected the cycle that we are talking about,
Exactly. Exactly.
the
It's
light
not
and then in the darkness, and it's okay, I'm still here. It's not that we have to see it, it's irrelevant. We're having a conversation.
yes, That's wonderful. Going down and going up and not being in the same place all the
All
time.
the time. And this, this idea of perfection, and to deliverance. So I just let it go. So for everybody that is watching the video, I hope you can just also relax into that. And I think I'm gonna wrap it up. This
We
is
need to finish.
wonderful
Yes.
to spend time with you, Keriesa. And so, if you just want to mention the dates of your upcoming course,
Okay.
how to get hold of you.
It starts on the 26th of June. So that's a whole Saturday. And then two half Saturdays, the 3rd of July and the 17th of July. And then again a full day on the 31st of July. And if you're interested, you can either email me, Keriesa, Keriesa 6 at gmail.com. And the 6 is a number 6.
Mm.
Keriesa and the number 6 at gmail.com. Or you can WhatsApp me at 084 608 1304. 084 608 1304. And it's in Cape Town.
And I will also write all this detail in the comment on the podcast that anybody can find on the YouTube page, but also onto if you're just listening to the podcast, in the comment, you will find the link to Keriesa email and telephone number.
Thank you,
Right.
Valentina. Just such a joy. I so love you. And
Yeah,
I'm so proud of you being there in Bali and slowing down and allowing your inspiration to land and being
yeah, it
on
really
this.
feels like I'm starting a complete new phase of my life. And my daughter is approaching puberty, and I am approaching menopause. So it also feels a very important time to take a break. We just removed ourselves from the habits and came and spent some times here, and now I've let go of all expectation completely. And I do
Yes.
feel that my menopause is being so far relatively smooth because I've done the work with you and with myself. And I did the work with you many years back. I mean, I can't
Mm.
even number them, but it was still 3 months, the course, I think,
Yes,
4 months.
yes.
And it is one of the most powerful work I have done. And I keep recommending it to all the women that work with me and assist me, because it's really ground the awareness of being a woman into this rhythm that is happening anyway. And it's not fluffy, it's not. I feel that a lot of the contemporary work about feminine wisdom also still dance around the young goddess archetype or the princess.
Mm,
They just
mm,
want to, she wants to have it as she wanted. And I felt
mm,
that working with you, it's really in the real and it's profound. And your
mm.
counseling skill also are really, really powerful. And I'm also just mentioning this, if anybody is listening, you're still available for session. Do you also work
Yes,
privately?
yes. And I work also on Zoom.
Yeah, and your
Mm,
work with psychophonetics is it's so embodied. It's not about talking about things, and
mm,
it's about really embodying it and moving the wisdom of the body. And you're a wonderful midwife for birthing the soul into the body of people, and you supported me really profoundly in my life. So yeah, I wish you all the best, and
thank you.
I look forward maybe in the next time we can have a conversation all focused on menopause only, perhaps. We'll
Yes,
see.
yes, yes, yes.
And maybe when I come back at the end of the year, let's do an event together.
Absolutely, absolutely. You on. I'd love that.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody, for
Valentina.
listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day or your night. Ciao, ciao.